During World War II, the Truk Islands, now Truk Lagoon in the Caroline Islands, became one of the most formidable fortresses of the Imperial Japanese Navy. Naturally protected by a ring of coral reefs, with only a few narrow entrances, Truk Lagoon earned the name Gibraltar of the Pacific. A base so secure some compared it to Pearl Harbor itself. The atoll bristled with airfield seaplane bases, coastal guns, and layered anti-aircraft defenses that guarded the safe harbors inside the lagoon. Truk sat astride vital supply routes between Japan and Southeast Asia and the rich southern regions. That made it a strategic prize that neither side could ignore. By early 1940, the balance in the Pacific had shifted. US and Australian forces under General Douglas MacArthur drove the Japanese back during Operation Cartwheel and isolated many island groups across the South Pacific. At the same time, the fleet of Admiral Chester W. Nimitz struck the Gilbert and Marshall Islands and built forward air bases only a few hundred miles east of Truk. Pressed hard, the Japanese High Command began to pull its main forces out of the lagoon. In October 1943, Admiral Minachi Koga quietly moved most of the combined fleet to Palau and then to Indonesia. Early in February 1940, US reconnaissance planes spotted major warships at anchor at Truk, including the battleship Musashi and the carriers Zuiho and Chiyoda. Koga reacted at once and ordered the remaining capital ships to leave. By mid-February, the carriers, battleships, and heavy cruisers had slipped away just in time. The hammer was coming. Yet dozens of transport, supply ships, and smaller warships stayed inside to keep logistics and local defense running. To break the fortress, the United States launched Operation Hailstone. It was a massive carrier-based assault meant to smash Truk before the next Allied offensives. The operation also aligned with the US invasion of Anitok in the Marshalls and aimed to choke Japan's supply hub and block reinforcements. The attacking force was Task Force 58 under Vice Admiral Marc Mitscher, with overall direction from Admiral Raymond Spruance. 5 fleet carriers sailed Enterprise, Yorktown, Essex, Intrepid, and Bunker Hill, along with 4 light carriers and more than 500 aircraft. Battleships, cruisers, and destroyers formed a strong screen. The fleet left Majuro Atoll and headed west to unleash a hailstorm over the tropical stronghold. Before dawn on February 17, 1940, the US carriers launched their first strike while the sky was still dark. Engines thundered as hundreds of planes lifted into the night. They flew low under cloud and slipped in unseen by radar. No Japanese patrol planes were up. Many pilots from the Truk air groups were on leave and the fields lacked ready crews. Worse, the radar at Truk could not spot low-flying aircraft. The result was total surprise. The first wave hit out of nowhere. Sirens wailed over the islands as American aircraft poured into the sky. Japanese pilots sprinted to their planes and tried to get airborne. Squadrons from Task Force 58 appeared over Eton, Peramone, and Dublin. The defenders had more than 300 aircraft, but only about half got into the air. Those that did were thrown into a hopeless dogfight. The famous Mitsubishi Zero no longer ruled the sky. The Noor F-6F Hellcat was faster, tougher, and better armed. With speed and firepower and the edge of surprise, the American pilots swept the sky clean. By midday, around 30 Zeros were down while only 4 Hellcats were lost. With the air won, the Americans turned to the ground. Waves of Hellcats, Dauntless dive bombers, and Avenger torpedo bombers hit airfields, fuel depots, radar sites, and anti-aircraft guns. Within hours, the field on Eton, the seaplane base on Mone, and many key sites burned. More than 40 Japanese aircraft were destroyed on the ground. Recon pilots later reported strong resistance only in the morning. By afternoon, almost no Japanese planes rose to fight. Now the Navy focused on the ships trapped inside the lagoon. Through the day, American pilots flew more than 30 bombing runs against shipping in Truk harbors. Dauntless and Avenger crews rained bombs and torpedoes on the vessels below. By night, many hundreds of bombs and dozens of torpedoes had struck. With no warning and no fighter cover left, Japanese crews could only fire their anti-aircraft guns from the islands. Chaos spread across the lagoon. Transport ships, supply vessels, and small warships were hit one after another. Many exploded, broke apart, and sank into water that had once looked like a peaceful paradise. Close to Dublin Island, Lieutenant Commander James D. Ramage, who led bombing squadron VB-10 from USS Enterprise, dived and placed his bombs with deadly aim. They struck the oil tanker Hoyomaru and blew it into a fireball that lit the sky. Elsewhere, Lieutenant James E. Bridges of Torpedo Squadron VT-6 from USS Intrepid drove his Avenger straight at the ammunition ship Ikokumaru. His bomb punched into the magazine. The detonation turned the ship into a small sun. The blast erased the vessel in seconds and engulfed the Avenger as well. Bridges and his crew died in the fire. Ikokumaru sank with hundreds of soldiers and engineers aboard. Smaller warships fell one by one. To the north, the destroyer Fumizuki took a torpedo amidships. Her crew fought through the night, but flooding one, and she slipped beneath the waves by dawn. The destroyer Tokakoshi had grounded on a reef earlier in the month. Bombs wrecked her and an American torpedo smashed the engine room. She went down stern first in a wall of flame. Another destroyer took a torpedo and broke into and sank almost at once, with more than 170 men lost. The veteran ship Shika, known as the Lucky Ship, did not escape this time. A bomb hit the number 2 gun turret. 21 sailors died and 45 were wounded. Battered but afloat, Shika limped back to Japan and escaped destruction at Truk. With the defenders broken, small groups of American planes roamed the lagoon and hunted any ship that tried to flee. The light cruiser Noka, flagship of the 4th Cruiser Division, ran west at full speed. Aircraft from Bunker Hill and Kaupensive Task Group 58.3 found her about 35 nautical miles from Truk. Helldiver dive bombers and Avenger torpedo planes swooped in and attacked. Within minutes, Noka took at least 1 bomb and 1 torpedo. She broke into and sank, taking 240 sailors with her. Rear Admiral Ichimaru was blown overboard but survived, and a Japanese destroyer pulled him from the sea. The ruin of the first day did not satisfy Admiral Raymond Spruance. He wanted a final blow. Late in the afternoon, he detached a surface action group called Task Group 50.9. It held the battleships Iowa and New Jersey, the heavy cruisers Minneapolis and New Orleans, and for destroyers. The mission was simple: sail into Truk Lagoon and finish any ship still afloat. At the entrance of the lagoon, the group met a small Japanese force that was trying to escape. It included the light cruiser Katori, the auxiliary ship Ikokumaru, the destroyers Mikoshi and Naoki, and the escort minesweeper Shonan Maru No. 15. Carrier planes had already hit them, and Ikokumaru burned after 3 bomb strikes, and her crew abandoned ship. Spruance wanted a surface fight. He ordered Vice Admiral Mitscher to stop air attacks on the fleeing ships so the surface group could finish the job with naval gunfire. From the bridge of New Jersey, Spruance directed the final battle. It was short and brutal. Katori, already holed and on fire, still fought with her remaining guns. The American ships closed the range. Iowa opened with her main guns that were 16-inch and with her 5-inch batteries. The cruiser broke apart under the storm of shells. Minneapolis and New Orleans joined in, and the destroyers Bradford and Burns added more fire and torpedoes. Katori capsized and sank and vanished under the waves. Elsewhere, the destroyer Mikoshi fired a spread of torpedoes at New Jersey. They missed, and the flagship swung hard to evade. Iowa answered with heavy fire, and the U.S. destroyers charged. Mikoshi took many hits, exploded, and sank with her entire crew. The escort vessel Shonan Maru No. 15 went down as well. Only the destroyer Naoki escaped into the night. At dusk, the Japanese tried a desperate counterattack. 8 torpedo bombers flew low over the water in small groups. Most were shot down by fighters and anti-aircraft fire. One attacker broke through and put a torpedo into the carrier USS Intrepid hull. The blast wrecked a propeller shaft and shook the ship. 11 American sailors died and many more were wounded. Intrepid left the formation for repairs that lasted almost 6 months. It was the only serious U.S. loss during Operation Hailstone. Vice Admiral Mitscher refused to give the enemy a pause. He ordered a night strike. Just after midnight on February 18th, the U.S. Navy launched its first carrier night air attack. 12 Avenger bombers from Squadron VT-10 on USS Enterprise each carried for 250-kilogram bombs. They flew in under starlight and took turns hitting the ships that still lay at anchor. The squadron made 25 attack runs, scored 13 direct hits, and lit 7 huge fires. Explosions rolled across the lagoon and the horizon glowed with flame. The end of the trapped fleet was set. At dawn the next day, the carriers Enterprise, Yorktown, Essex, and Bunker Hill launched another massive strike. No Japanese planes rose to meet them. US air crews picked their targets at will and burned what remained. Fuel depots, ammunition dumps, hangars, and supply bases on Dublin and Eton fell one by one. Tall plumes of black smoke climbed into the sky. An estimated 17,000 tons of fuel went up in flames. After 36 hours of strikes, Admiral Spruance declared the goals met and ordered the fleet to regroup and withdraw before nightfall. Operation Hailstone was a crushing US victory. Over 2 days, Task Force 58 flew about 1,250 sorties and dropped about 400 tons of bombs and torpedoes. Truk was crippled. Japan lost between 250 and 275 aircraft, more than 3/4 of its supply depots, 17,000 tons of fuel and nearly 200,000 tons of cargo. At sea, to light cruisers Noka and Katori were sunk, along with 4 destroyers Fumizuki, Mikoshi Oit, and Tokakoshi, and more than 40 transport tanker and auxiliary ships. That accounted for nearly 1/10 of all Japanese merchant losses in those 8 months. US losses were light, with 25 aircraft down, 40 personnel killed, and no warships sunk. Intrepid was damaged but returned to action later. After the battle, the US Navy sent rescue patrols for downed airmen. Lieutenant George M. Blair of VF-9 from USS Essex was saved when Lieutenant Denver F. Baxter landed his Kingfisher seaplane in enemy waters in broad daylight. Blair held onto the wing as Baxter took off under fire, while 9 Hellcats circled as guards. The rescue earned Baxter the Distinguished Flying Cross, and it stood as a symbol of courage and brotherhood amid the burning lagoon. For Japan, Truk Lagoon never again seemed impregnable. The lightning strike stunned the high command and broke its confidence. Allied air and sea patrols cut the base off. With no supplies, the garrison grew hungry and exhausted, and its defences sagged. Seeing that Truk no longer held strategic value, Admiral Chester W. Nimitz cancelled a full invasion in March 1944. He pulled the fangs without losing a single soldier. US then turned to the Marianas. The campaign for Saipan, Guam, and Tinian opened the road across the Central Pacific and toward the heart of the Japanese Empire.